Welcome to the Tape Library. Tonight I am bringing you 4 more cases of real-life ghost stories, all told in the words of the people who experienced them. In this entry, we will visit a university campus with a dark history, witness a skeptic turn into a believer after an unsettling experience at a seance, hear about some talkative people on a farm that cannot be seen, and encounter a spirit that is potentially not a big fan of Christmas. If you enjoy tales of the paranormal and the unexplained, then I'd love it if you could subscribe and join us for each new entry into the Tape Library archives. So grab yourself a hot drink, get comfortable, and let's get into our first case tonight. A young student moves away from home to start their future at university, but when they arrive, they discover an odd relic from the past in their dorm room. A relic that appears to be more than it seems.
So I'm an 18-year-old female college student, and all the residential areas on my campus have a different name. Highland, Park, Historic and North. I chose to live in the historic district because it was the one with the most greenery. It was close to all my classes, and my brother stayed in the same dorm when he went to my uni. I live on floor 3 of 3 at my dorm, and I noticed something really odd after moving in. There's an intercom right on the wall at the foot of my bed. I inquired about it at the front desk, asking if it was hooked up to the desk or campus security, anything like that. The desk assistant had no clue what I was talking about, and directed me to the most popular RA in the building. I asked him about the intercom, and he told me the story as follows. Back in the day, the rooms had intercoms that went to the basement. Not sure why the basement, but the basements of the historic dorms are closed after someone unalived themselves in there back in the day. There's also rumours they're connected to the bomb shelter onto campus, but I don't know. I was aware of the bomb shelters. We have staircases that lead down at random spots all over campus. One was just outside and to the right of my dorm, and you can even hear the pressure release from them every half hour to hour. But this intercom thing spooked me, so I chose to ignore it. My roommates and I had pretty opposite schedules, so we were rarely in the room together. Weird stuff would happen to us though. I'd be working at my desk and hear a woman go, "Hello?" who I'd assume was my roommate or friend from down the hall, but I'd turn around and no one was there. My closet is about 2 feet from the intercom, and sometimes I'd hear the doorknob turn. It's all good stuff in this dorm, everything creaks. My roommate would text me, asking if I forgot my keys and was knocking on the door, which obviously I wasn't. There was even a time where we were both in the room, and a huge bang hit the door, right next to the intercom. We freaked out, looked through the peephole, but saw no one. We slowly opened the door to look down the hall, and because we're in the centre, there isn't anywhere to run. But no one would be there. My roommate broke her leg a month into the school year and had to drop out, leaving me on my own. These weird occurrences would happen, so I spent a lot of time in my friend's room, only ever sleeping in mine. Eventually we migrated to hanging out in my room, but my friends would always comment about how bad the energy was. It seemed to subside after a bit, but there are still some days I walk in and it's absolutely draining in there. There have even been instances when my boyfriend and I are about to fall asleep, and he will say, "What do you mean?" and I ask confused what he's talking about. And he'll go, "Didn't you just say..." Some weird clicking, almost like a telegraph, started coming from the intercom around October. I asked the RA about it, but he assured me the intercom was disconnected. I started making more friends, meaning I was in more rooms in my building, and the more I spent time elsewhere, the more I realised my room is the only room with an intercom. Even as I write this, I have an uneasy feeling, like I shouldn't be saying any of this.
Our next case sees a self-declared skeptic being forced to question everything they believe when they experience a seance that unveils some long-forgotten family history.
I thought I'd share something interesting that happened to me about 15 years ago. Most won't believe me, but for what it's worth, I promise everything I tell you is 100% true, and how it happened to the best of my memory. However, names have been changed. I was about 18 and I was hanging out at my friend Joanne's house with some other school friends. Can't quite remember how we got onto the subject, but towards the end of the evening, Joanne thought it would be fun to perform a seance. Joanna and her family were from Cape Town, South Africa, and had a deep-rooted interest in the spiritual, or at least that's what Joanne made out to us. With the lights off and candles lit, we all sat at a round table, with cards fanned out around the edges. Each card had a letter of the alphabet arranged A to Z, and there was a shot glass placed in the middle. Joanne starts speaking out to the spirits in Afrikaans. I remember pulling a face and rolling my eyes. It was too dark for anyone to take offence. At the time I was an insufferable, enlightened atheist teen dork. You know the type. Cringy 4chan edgelord, who thinks any form of spirituality or religion is beneath me and my superior intellect. I never wore a fedora, but I was damn close. However, what was about to happen made me question everything. It started mundane enough. A few questions were asked, and the shot glass we were resting our fingers on started to move, to and fro, until eventually one of my friends asked the spirit if they were associated with anyone in the room. The shot glass moved directly towards me. Incredulous, I asked the spirit, "If you're associated with me, then what's my mother's maiden name?" My eyes fixate on the letters that spell out her maiden name, Jones. But the glass started spelling out something different. First the glass went to T, then H, then O. I thought then it was bullshit, as it was completely wrong. Then I was struck by a horrific realisation. When my mum was 6 months old, her biological father died of a heart attack, and a year after that, she took her stepfather's name. I completely forgot this in the moment, as I was expecting the glass to read out the maiden name she had for the majority of her life, but it was actually spelling out her original maiden name, of Thompson. It was a fact so trivial that I barely remembered it myself. It was something never talked about even within my family, as it happened so long ago. It would be hard to believe that any of my friends would know this esoteric piece of my family history that occurred 20 years before I was even born. But nonetheless, somehow, it was being spelled out in front of my very eyes. Thompson. My school friends and I wouldn't talk about anything deeper than video games and tits at that age. Yet there's no way I ever mentioned this to any of them. It's not like one of my pot-smoking loser friends has a copy of my mum's birth certificate, and none of them had even met anyone else in my family. There was literally no way anyone could have known this. Before I could contemplate this for too long or ask any other questions to my ghostly associate, Joanne's mum came into the room and turned the lights on, and with a thick South African accent shouted something like, "Bloody hell, Joanne, stop messing around with this silly crap," and put a definitive stop to the proceedings. Of course, at the time I played it off as a prank, but the more I think of it, the more my mind wonders. Did something actually paranormal happen that night? I know it's nothing dramatic or exciting. I didn't see an apparition or a cryptid. But unlike 90% of the shit you read on Reddit, this experience is actually true, and something to this day I can't explain.
I think one of the things about many paranormal cases that makes them hard to talk about is how they rely so heavily on the feelings and sensations that a witness experiences during the encounter. Sometimes it's hard to express on paper what that person has truly gone through. I think the feelings associated with these brushes with the paranormal play a huge role in the next two cases. The first takes us to an old farm, where voices are drifting in through an open window on a warm summer night.
This event happened about 1981, and I was 11 years old. My younger cousin Kathy was also visiting our grandparents and staying the night. We were in an upstairs bedroom of the farmhouse that was located right in the centre of the 100 acres. Just beside the house to the east was what I called the old tractor road. I've heard this type of road referred to as a two-rut road. My upstairs bedroom window overlooked this old farming road, which was probably in use, even before the old farmhouse was built. Right next to the house was a stacked wood pile, and then a 4 or 5 foot wide grass walkway. On the other side was our grandmother's 15-foot wide garden that ran parallel to the old road. So even in the dark, I could easily see the road since it was so close to the house. On the opposite side of the road was a huge 35-acre cornfield that at the time easily stood 5 to 6 feet tall. It was a warm summer evening, and we were supposed to be sleeping by this time, but we were talking about music and our favourite bands. Being Canadian, she naturally liked the band Rush. My cousin and I began to hear a distant conversation between at least 2 people that was definitely coming from outside. We could also faintly hear footsteps on the two-rut dirt road. As the conversation got closer and the footsteps also became louder, we slowly kneeled down at the open window and listened. It was probably around 11 o'clock or so, and our eyes were already well adjusted to the dark, so we would easily be able to see what was happening just below the window. The conversation and footsteps gradually became louder, and we knew for sure we would see who was trespassing on our land. Maybe our grandmother would hear what we were hearing, and she would appear with her shotgun, as she had done many times before when she thought there was a threat to our property. Grandma was no joke, and once grabbed a huge knife and told me to go get the front end loader. When I returned, she had already gutted a cow and had it ready to hang from the loader. Well, Grandma did not show up to save the night this time. The conversation and footsteps gradually became louder and louder. Then, without my cousin or I seeing a thing, they just as slowly became quieter and quieter, and slowly stopped. There was no possibility of this walking conversation taking place in the cornfield, because we did not hear the familiar and unmistakable sound of at least 2 people making their way through a tall cornfield. I should also add that we saw no flashlight or lantern. We only heard the conversation and footsteps. I do not recall what the conversation was about, and at this time I'm unsure if the conversation was understandable at all. Well, we never saw anything or anyone. This probably happened over the course of maybe 2 minutes or so, but I have spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours thinking back to this warm country night and what we were able to hear but not see. I cannot explain this event and can only describe it as the first of 2 experiences I had on that farm.
Our final case tonight takes us to an experience this witness had at her then boyfriend's home. An old, large Victorian building that has seen its fair share of history take place within its walls. But it seems there might be something darker, lurking deep inside, hidden behind closed doors. Something that on this particular night decided to come out to play.
I can tell you nothing in this story is made up. Yes, the house should be condemned, nobody should be living in it at all. But I live in a very impoverished area, and big old Victorian houses are super cheap because they need so much work to be livable. This house was not livable, but they were making it work. I have so many stories about this house and crazy things that happened there, but this one in particular is something I could never forget. Even typing it, I have goosebumps the whole time. The feelings felt there that night are ones that aren't forgotten. I was visiting my ex who lived in a super old house. It had been a hotel, brothel, store, and a funeral home in its former life. At this point it is a home that would look so beautiful if you could only see the beautiful architecture and grand wallpaper as they used to be. Instead, the house looks like it has been forgotten for some time. Dust and cobwebs are visible on every surface, but especially on the deep mahogany carved trim that encircled every room and sometimes protruded into elaborate carvings of guardian protectors. It was unnerving to be in this house at any time. The hair on the back of your neck would stand up every time you switched rooms, as if you had walked in on something that couldn't be seen. That feeling is something you can get used to though. It's a feeling that fades quickly and grows comfortable after a while. This was a feeling that you don't mind because it didn't trigger any emotion. It was just more of a reminder that some people are unseen. At night, the house was a different story. Not often, but some nights, the house after the sun set felt different. It filled with tension. You could still feel the hair on your neck stand, but the energy of someone being there is much different. This feeling causes goosebumps. It's uncomfortable, tension-filled and chilling. This feeling doesn't fade, and sometimes returns just from mentions of the stories I encountered. Not lasting as long as before, but definitely there. This night I went over because my boyfriend's parents and siblings had gone out to town and needed us to dog sit. We hung around the house and watched TV. That night we decided we would travel to the upstairs back hall just to scare ourselves. The house felt quieter than normal that day. We were worried we might not see anything in the back hall, like all of the last spirits were on vacation. But that night it changed. Everyone knows this house is haunted, there is no doubt. But as you climb the stairs to the second story, you are met with another level of paranormal. Almost constantly you hear things that don't make sense. You feel that negative tension in the air, and you catch things out of the corner of your eye that you can't find reasoning for. To add a little extra spice, the upstairs had lost all of its electricity several years prior. Instead they had extension cords running to the 3 main bedrooms. The upstairs is split into two parts. One of the parts is at the top of the staircase. It opens to 3 main bedrooms, each with a giant door made of solid wood, and sharing the same grand crown moulding as downstairs. Immediately to the left of the staircase was another identical door. This door leads to a hallway. The hallway has a few rooms and a bathroom. Room numbers still grace the front of each door to let hotel guests know which room would be accommodating them for the evening. As the sun went down, we got excited to go exploring and maybe dig up some trouble. Live for the adrenaline of it, get a little spook in. As we went up the stairs, things felt different. Even in the dark, nothing was happening. Just like earlier in the day, the house was quiet. It just felt like we were in any old house. No goosebumps, no presence of another, no noise. As we turned the knob and opened the door to the back hallway, it changed immediately. Suddenly all around us was a presence of darkness and a feeling of terror. We immediately had the same thought. No. We closed the door and almost immediately the air cleared of the terrible feeling it had presented just moments earlier. Since the house felt so calm, we decided to spend some time in my boyfriend's bedroom upstairs. As we lay there watching a movie, the lights flickered. Not uncommon because of the extension cord fire hazard that ran from the living room and up the stairs. The flicker brought with it that horrible presence we had felt, opening the back hallway door, rushing back to us. As we glanced at each other in terror, the lights flickered once more, and a loud crash came from outside the door. And the repetitive beats, like a toddler running, pounded loudly in the hallway, directly outside the room. There was only 5 or 6 steps, but they were incredibly loud. As soon as the pounding footfalls stopped, the air changed to normal again. We sat, catching our breath together for what seemed like forever. Neither of us saying a word. When we did speak, we decided we should leave for the night. The dog would be fine until the morning. Upon opening the door to his bedroom to get out of the house, we heard a crunch. Lifting his shoe, we noticed that my ex had just stepped in broken glass. Upon further inspection, we realised it wasn't just broken glass. It was broken Christmas bulbs. These were special ornaments that his mum put up every year and keeps in totes with locking lids to prevent breakages. These totes are behind a closed door, down a hallway, and inside a room that also had a closed door, far away from where they now lay at our feet. We left.
Do you have a paranormal encounter that you'd like read out on the tape library? You can find my email address in the description. Be sure to drop me a message if you have your own experience you'd like to talk about. As always, where possible, the original links to the stories are all included in the description, so if you want to learn more about a particular story, you can always find the original authors there. Thank you for joining me for the latest entry into the archives. Until next time, pleasant dreams.